Hi! This is particularly weird for me. This is the first time I've done a video for this channel, and we've got to begin with quite a negative topic, go figure. But I do honestly think that this is a really important thing to bring up. So before I start, I just want to apologise for the mic quality. My channel's very new, as I said, and I did what I could with such a small amount of funds. Hopefully I'll be able to improve this over time, but I'm going to try as hard as I possibly can to make the audio sound better in editing. So I apologise for any kind of background noise, odd sounds. My microphone's really cheap. I'm working on things. Around YouTube recently, there's been a lot of talk about Onision and his relationships. But this isn't anything particularly new. By that I mean he's always been the topic of hot controversy. However, what I really want to talk about today is Greg's husband, Kai Anderson. Some of you might know Kai as his original channel name, Lanybot, but this is before he was out as transgender, something that I'll return to. Obviously there's been a lot of comments about his sexual coercion with his husband to minors, and today I want to talk about something that I think is a little bit different. Specifically, I want to close in on Kai, as I said. I want to focus on the fact that there's a chance that he's somewhat victimised. I've got reason to believe so anyway. But before we do start with Kai, we do have to know the case with Greg. And for the record, this video is going to have some heavy-hitting themes, so viewer discretion is advised. I also want to say, if you find that you or someone you know relates to the situations discussed, I implore you to please tell somebody, and I've left links down below in the descriptions to numbers and websites where you can do so. Abuse is something that can happen in many different forms, from sexual abuse to physical abuse, emotional abuse, as well as a host of other types. And I want to look at Greg's case as a generalised form of emotional abuse, and I'd like to take a look specifically at the spiral of abuse. The spiral contains 12 key factors, but we're just going to look at the first 10. The first part of this is love bombing. Now, love bombing is described as a display of excessive attention with professions of deep love. So in December of 2015, Greg and Kai, then still known as Lainey, flew Billy Ingle, Kai's then girlfriend, in to meet them for the first time. This was said to be a way for Kai to explore his bisexuality, as he was still conforming to the female gender at this time. During this point, the ages would have been as followed: Billy aged 18, Kai aged 21, and Greg aged 30. Throughout this period, Greg's videos were all filled with compliments towards Billy, thus playing into the idea of love bombing her to his massive audience. After a while, an affair began between the two, Greg and Billy, which Kai wasn't happy about. Tentatively, they settled into a polyamorous relationship, but the relationship was still littered with quite a lot of problems. Every time Billy broke up with them, Greg changed his tact and began love bombing Kai on social media instead, as can be seen in this screenshot, which was taken 2 days after he first cheated on Kai with Billy. This back and forth behaviour continued. When Billy joined the relationship once again, he changed and began to show her copious amounts of attention online. This wasn't so prevalent on Twitter and Instagram as it was with Kai, but he spent much more time talking to Billy on Twitter and during videos than he did with Kai. For a while, that is. But things in the videos seemed to get somewhat stony, with people commenting that Billy seemed more like an attractive accessory to the video rather than an actual part of it. And while looking into these comments, there were a lot of them, which means that people definitely noticed. But that brings us right into the second phase of the abuse spiral. Now, this is something that I'd say is most synonymous with the idea of abusers. Not allowing a person to see people around them, yet doing so because they love them, which I say in heavy air quotations. So I'll be using this next screenshot later on when it comes to specifically discussing Kai too. But here we see Greg trying to make Billy not see her family again, or as infrequently as possible, and he uses a variety of techniques to do this. Guilting, using examples, etc. He openly admits that he does this to Kai, and he words it to sound as though it's Kai's sole decision to never speak to his family. But the level of manipulation used here really suggests otherwise. He then opts to instead guilt-trip Billy, insulting her family by calling them illegal drug users, claiming she lies to him and mentioning a contract, and I don't know what this contract means, and frankly, I don't know if I really want to know. There's more to this that specifically regards Kai, but I'm going to come back to that when we get to the section about him. Even despite that, there are more times in which this has occurred. In his relationship in 2007 with his then wife Sky, Greg maintained a blog which went under 3 different URLs: onision.blog.woogame.com, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry, blog.onision.com, and onision.wordpress.com. All of the URLs were removed, but they can be found pretty easily with the Wayback Machine, which I used a lot while doing my research into this video. And I'm going to read 2 of the posts that he made in regard to Sky in 2007. January 24th, 2007. Alright, so it's been a few days since Sky and I hung out with another couple. Judging from the fact that these were the only people who knew that had a lifestyle that wasn't drugged out, beered out, also known as drugged out, smoked out, ethically lacking, rude, etc., and we can't even enjoy ourselves around them as much as we do each other. I just really don't see myself and Sky spending time with anyone in the future other than family. It seems that everyone who isn't blood related has something extremely wrong with them. It may not be apparent at first, like a used car, but when you get on the road with them and get to know them, the clanks and pings begin to show. Maybe not after the first few miles, but definitely after the second or third ride. This post goes to highlight the level of manipulation Greg's willing to go to. He hides this by grouping himself and his ex-wife into one unit. Notice the use of myself and Sky, Sky and I. Yet, when mentioning that him and his wife no longer associate with anyone but family, he says, "I just don't really see." No mention of wife's agreement or dismissal, despite referring to them as combined just a few sentences before. The next post was actually 3 days later. January 27th, 2007. I was going to post something extremely long about how upset I am with 2 people I know, within my personal life, who are continuously trying to break my wife and I apart physically and vocally. But I'm not going to, as I believe it can only cause greater level of drama, which is exactly what they feed on. In fact, they probably know I'm talking about them right now, and they're dialing my number just to tell me/others how wrong I am for my wife, and somehow, by saying I love her every hour of the day, feeding her full of yummy food, trying to make her feel happy emotionally/other ways, putting a roof over her head, that in result of that, I'm a bad husband. Another heavily manipulative tactic that Greg likes to use is guilt tripping. I did mention this before in the situation with Billy. And this is evident on so many occasions. In the post I just read, we find out that people were aware of the way that Greg was treating Sky and viewed it as morally wrong, which it absolutely was, and in turn they tried to separate them, which is fair. But instead of listening to their point, he plays the victim as per usual. Now, this section's just going to be an extremely brief overview, as I don't have very many screenshots for this, but I will provide what we do know. Greg's been in many public relationships, and on each occasion he refers to the person as his soulmate, somebody he cares for extensively. Now, this alone doesn't seem like much, but you have to remember the ways for definite we know he treats his partners. Other videos go more in depth on this topic. I'm not going to carry on with this point, as I don't want to pursue something that I don't have too much evidence for, but there are so many videos out explaining what I'm saying. I may not have had nearly enough points for the last issue, but with this part of the abuse spiral, we've got a fair bit to go through. To do this, I'm going to bring up points that are made in Adrian. To do this, I'm going to bring up some points that are made in Adrienne's letter. She's Greg's ex-girlfriend, which can be shown in the video here, which was created by Greg himself. I apologise if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. I've never seen that name actually said. But let's begin by reading the letter, shall we? I wake up the next morning to a series of texts from him saying that he's not right in the head, that he's not over the e-fling he was having with Miss Ménage à Trois, or was it the ex-girlfriend from 10 years ago he had just started talking to again? I can't remember. And that he isn't going to be around or make himself available to me anymore. I responded with a very cold and callous text telling him I don't appreciate being chewed up and spit back out, especially when he wasn't the only one with feelings here. I told him if this is what he wants, then so be it, and I said goodbye. He called me immediately to talk about the person he was upset over. I wasn't amused. He quickly realised that trying to manipulate me into a jealous frenzy wasn't working, and somehow managed to reroute the conversation and relevance of bringing up the other girl into him, working things out with me. He was so sweet and charming, so I accepted when he said he wanted another shot with me. We made a Skype date for later that evening. She quite literally and explicitly comments on Greg's manipulative nature, trying to push her into a situation of extreme jealousy and changing his tack to this charmer as soon as he realised it wasn't working. And assuming this is all true, the fact he swapped out so quickly after realising his methods weren't working just shows a complete lack of empathy. Now we're going to read another bit of her letter. The next comment has some sexual notes. It's not particularly graphic by any means, but I do presume that some people might not be comfortable wanting to hear about this, so I'm going to put a timestamp right here where you can skip to the key part of the section of the letter if you wish. Then the conversation got really warped and sexual. He started asking me how I felt about uncircumcised penises, proceeded to tell me about his, then asked all sorts of sexual questions about myself. He asked me how I protect myself during sex, and I told him that I couldn't find a birth control that's right for me, so I use condoms. I, however, made the mistake of telling him that I'm allergic to them, so ultimately it ends up being painful for me. I joked around saying that I'd rather be pregnant than use the alternative and shove lamb hide inside of me, and I guess he took me seriously, because he responded, "Well, it's settled, we won't use condoms then." I asked him, "What if I get pregnant?" And he told me we'd cross that bridge when we come to it, and implied that having a mini-me might not be such a bad thing later down the line. I did not realise that he meant like 2 weeks. Even though I objected to or was offended by everything he was saying, I didn't have the emotional energy to be assertive and tell him how I really felt, as by this point I was frightened by his unstable emotions and was scared he might never speak to me again if I upset him. I was utterly terrified of making him angry. In 3 days he'd already found ways to manipulate me and make me feel like my life would be mundane and worthless without him being in it, and I didn't want to challenge him. This only further pushes the idea of him being a highly manipulative person to the point that his girlfriend admits she fears angering him. That alone should be an extremely telltale sign. I'm going to leave her full post in the description because there's so much more there than I could possibly give in one video. It's not exactly hidden that Greg likes to take a very dominating position in relationships. I mean, that much is evident from his interesting tweets, let's say. Greg acts as a restricting force quite commonly, disallowing his girlfriends from being able to partake in certain activities, be it seeing their family, having a job, going out with friends, and for this, we're going to talk about Shiloh. I'm sure many people know about her. Her story with Greg is quite infamous. This quote comes from a blog post she created that really shows how little freedom Greg allowed the people he supposedly loved. Many don't know, 12 PM. I don't tell people how terrified I realised I was when I was with my ex. The things he's capable of truly put a shiver down my spine. I've only been that scared of someone once before him, and that was the man who kidnapped me when I was young. You would think being in a bad relationship just means you have problems, but it was so much more than that. I was alienated away from my family. Example, he got mad when I talked to my mum on the phone for too long and called me weird for having such a close relationship with her. He made me stop talking to my father completely because my father threatened to kill him if he didn't get out of my life. My father obviously knew what kind of man my ex was. He didn't like when I talked to my friends back in Canada because many of them smoked weed or drank alcohol. He didn't want me to do music anymore because he wanted me home all the time to spend time with him. And as if that wasn't proof enough, we have a point from Sky, his ex-wife too, who notes a pretty similar experience. Somewhere within the next few days, we have another completely ridiculous and unnecessary argument started entirely by him. As per usual, it involved Skype. I guess I'd forgotten about the mandatory Skype requirements of being his girlfriend and naively made plans to hang out with my friends instead of a Skype all night with him. Even though I gave him an advance warning that I wouldn't be able to chat, I was being foolish and thought maybe he could salvage his night and go do something fun himself. Unacceptable. He immediately calls me to tell me that I don't truly love him, that once again I'm not fighting for love. He told me he doesn't understand how I can choose my friends over him, that in order to be with him, that I have to prioritise him over everything. Then we ended up getting into this additional argument where I asked him, what's going to happen if we live together and I want to go out with my friends one night? His response was, well, I'll go with. We're supposed to do everything together. I added, I meant without you. He told me he thought I was being shady and he doesn't deserve to be treated like this. Even though I thought he was acting like a 5-year-old cult leader in the making, we played phone tag for about an hour. Eventually, I got him on the line long enough to tell him that friendships require constant maintenance and I'm not going to neglect the people I love because he is insecure with being left alone for a little while. I told him that when I said I'm not going to neglect the people I love, that I meant him as well, that there is such a thing as time management. I told him that healthy adult couples require time apart. What's the point in having me share my life with him when I have no life other than him to share? He might as well date himself. However, I also asked him about the job-related stuff and money. He told me that I could work for him, run the contact page on his forum and respond to people that he didn't have time to respond to himself and that he would pay me for it. He also told me he would teach me to edit videos so I could help him get his stuff out faster, since apparently YouTube has him on a deadline, I guess. I don't really understand this YouTube crap. He told me I could do this permanently since apparently his money would be mine if we were engaged, or I could do this until I was able to land a job of my own elsewhere. I mean, I have a couple of close friends who live in LA who I know would help me should I go out there and things end up in disaster, so I decided to just go for it. Nobody was free from Greg's manipulation. It became a mandatory statement. If you went out with Greg, you had to pay sole attention to him. This act of cutting so many people out of friends, family, jobs, just to keep them with him, really shows that deprived being that is Greg. I'm just going to make one brief statement for the 6th part of this, and that is that we're going to be talking a lot about this a bit later when we completely revolve around Kai. So stick around for that and we'll get to the gaslighting part. I'm actually going to rely on the word of the ever-important Onision Hurts People Tumblr page, which is linked below, and I used it for all of the research for this video bar a few points that I found myself. But I'm going to use their wording to explain this next section because I feel like they've summed it up extremely well. For the record, they do refer to Lainey as Lainey instead of Kai here, and also use she instead of he because this was written before Kai was out. So I'm going to use that as well as it makes it easier for me to read it, but that's not to say I agree with that, and for the rest of the video I will be referring to Kai as Kai unless I mention otherwise. Greg has already succeeded in doing this with Lainey and many other girlfriends in the past, and has attempted to do this to several more. When married to Sky, Greg insisted that she not have a job outside the home because he believes that a couple should spend most of their time together, despite later claiming that spouses who do not have a job outside the home, or at least have children, are useless. After meeting Shiloh, despite the fact that she was a celebrity in Canada at the time they met, he forced her to quit her singing career and move in with him to work for and with him full time. Upon breaking up with Shiloh, he dated a woman named Adrienne, again I still don't know if I'm actually saying that right, I'm probably not, who he attempted to manipulate into moving in with him within 3 weeks of the start of their relationship, and she almost did. And likewise, when he began dating Lainey, within a month of meeting her he'd proposed to her, rented a house in the state where she lived so that she could finish up high school, and then married her within the year. Lainey does not have a job and is completely financially and psychologically dependent upon Greg for not just survival, but for her sense of identity and self-worth as a person. I feel like again they did a really amazing job in summing that all up. Just really think about that. Oh boy, okay, where do we even begin with this? If you thought all the things that you'd already heard weren't enough, then you are truly in for a treat. So we begin with this Facebook post that was posted by Shiloh mentioning what Greg did to her, and I will read that out now. No, he never beat me, but he did shove me very hard into a doorframe while I was pregnant because I was trying to hug him when he didn't want a hug. Now, a hug is such a minimal thing, especially from somebody that you're meant to cherish and love. That's not to say you always have to accept those affections. If you don't want someone to hug you, then that's fine, but pushing someone who's in a vulnerable state for that, I mean, I don't know what to say about it, honestly. I feel like it doesn't need further explanation than that. But that's not even the start of it. Charlotte also notes the reasoning for her hairstyle during the infamous video of Greg recording her during a state of which seems to be intense psychosis. I had shaved half my head because I wanted to have that hairstyle. The reason my head got fully shaved is because during intercourse he said, "I want you to shave your head because you're a good." He then took me into the bathroom and shaved my head. I felt ugly and defeminized. I feel like these points unto themselves are pretty self-explanatory, but what about the post that became a staple of knowing how Greg acts? As quoted from the Tumblr page again, when Billy lied to him about smoking weed, he attempted to punish her by forcing her to dye her eyebrows green, shave off her hair, get an ugly tan, be chained to his basement wall for a week, wearing a sign that says "I'm sorry for lying, Lainey" around her neck, and tattoo "I'm a liar" in the small of her back. We're gonna, again, read out the text. I'm not surprised that you have some extreme options. Yes. I'll go through a list and you say yes or no to each, okay? Okay. Tattoo "I'm a liar" just above your ass. Not. Be chained to our basement wall for a week with a sign around your neck that says "I'm sorry for lying, Lainey." Not. 3 days. You're ridiculous. Okay, make a video about how you lied to Lainey and how you are sorry and want her back. Yes or no? No. Okay, bye. You always go for public humiliation. It's public honesty. Grow up. Seriously though, goodbye. For the record though, the chain to the wall thing is hot as hell. You're mega boring for turning that one down. Okay, bye now. Now, another thing that Greg likes to do is publicly bash the women who break up with him or that he breaks up with. Let's take again, for example, his ex-wife Sky. So during their relationship, Sky helped him producing a lot of his early Onision videos, as well as appearing in a few.
Sky! What, Greg?
Onision took to Twitter during this divorce to milk sympathy from his fans by implying that the alimony that he was paying was unfairly forced upon him, even though A, it was agreed in their settlement, and B, she rightly deserved the money for the part in his channel. All hail the thief, my ex-wife and many like her. I love how she steals from me every month, and yet people praise her on Facebook page as a hero. What a crazy. Greg, grow up, she's done nothing to you. Oh, you mean like rob me $1,000 monthly? You mean like that? And now what I view as one of the key points during Billy's breakup with Greg and Kai is, and I quote from the Tumblr page, he said and did several things that demean her character, including calling her a drug addict, implying that she's less than for being a high school dropout who lives with her parents still, and also revealed to his entire fanbase that she has an eating disorder, accused her family of being drug addicts, and that she's been sexually assaulted and had an abortion, a secret which she had previously revealed to only a handful of close friends and family. This behaviour extends past the relationships he had and into YouTube relationships too. And by that I mean friendly terms, not romantically. For example, when he and fellow YouTuber Blair White had a dispute, he posted a video calling her so many vile things that really pushed his narcissistic rage into the spotlight. I've tried to find the video, but I can't find it anywhere, and I also went onto Wayback Machine, but I couldn't find it there either. So all you can really do is take my word for it and have a look at responses to it. Then this is seen again in his arguments with another YouTuber whose name I don't know how to say, CYR. I don't know if there's a specific way to say that, so I apologise. But we're going to look at his tweets to this person. Actually, I confirmed without a doubt you lied twice, so yes, you did do something wrong. I thought you were better. Think of the thousands of dollars I lost supporting you, and you betrayed me like this after how much I promoted your channel? You were not drunk. Your friend's parents did not die in the Holocaust. You lied to me. You lied to your other friend too. You also lied to D Fizzy, who's always jumped at the opportunity to attack me. You should have just told the truth. But I guess the true you had to come out sooner or later. As I told you before, I cannot have liars in my life, so this is goodbye. Please do not ever speak of or to me again. After all I've given you, that is the least you can do for me now. Blocking you now. Now, regardless of how true or untrue these statements are, there's not really any need to bring up such a petty drama in somebody's life and possible truth onto social media. Now, I can't go into everybody, but for a quick compilation of all the people that he's verbally assassinated online, here you go. From his friends, CRY and Andy Biersack, different YouTubers were Social Repose, Jacqueline Glenn, Blair White, Eugenia Cooney, Dan Howell, Keemstar and Leafy is here. And the others are Isla, which is the best friend of Billy and the ex-girlfriend of Social Repose, Kai's family, his dad and his sister, and his own dad, as well as Luxie Moo, which is Hayley. You can feel free to look any of those up for certain validation. I feel again I don't need to go over detail on this point as it's fairly self-explanatory, and I'm going to once again allow the Tumblr master post to take over for this one. Before he'd even divorced Sky, he moved on to Shiloh. When Shiloh left him and went back to Canada, he met Adrienne. When he broke up with her, she refused to take him back. He was texting Shiloh and Sky within 24 hours. When Sky, Shiloh and Adrienne all refused to take him back, he then moved on to Kai, who he'd met and proposed marriage to within a few weeks. When he got bored of the ultimate power he exerted over Kai, he used him as queerbait to pull in Billy. When he and Kai broke up with Billy, still bored with Kai, he began auditioning new girls for the spot, which was Hayley, Luxie Moo and Erin. Kai doesn't know it yet, but this entire circle is going to begin repeating itself sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. So for point 10 in the cycle, I'm not going to give it its own part, as it's probably the most obvious of all of this. Acting as though nothing happened, must I really even give any points for that? Here he is tweeting as though nothing's happened at all, and here he is posting to YouTube under the same fashion. Now, I've been raging on for a long time about Greg, but I really want to talk about Kai. There's been accusations and proof of the couple sexually grooming a young girl, as well as countless other points that I don't feel I need to get into given the sheer animosity this has caused and how many people have already commented on it. But behind all that, I want to look at Kai. To what extent can we blame him? For the record, before I carry on, I am by no means saying that he's exempt from his actions. He is as vile a person as Greg is in many ways. But I do think that to some degree his actions are based on Greg's treatment of him. In terms of abuse, there's typically two general outcomes. Either the victim tells somebody and escapes the situation, or they become further encapsulated and don't. That isn't set in stone for every situation, that's just a general overview. Whilst most of Greg's exes have been the former, I think that Kai's unfortunately become the latter. So let's discuss Kai. And for this, I'm going to be using a highly extensive timeline found on the Twitter account Onion Uncovered. And I recommend you follow this account if you're interested in this case. They make some really good and insightful points. I'll leave a link to this amazing community-made abuse timeline. In any screenshots I show, he'll be referred to as she and Lainey, as he was not out at this point, but I'll continue with his preferred name and pronouns. So Kai claims that the video that sparked his interest in Greg was the video Shane Dawson posted in 2011, Gay Kiss with Shane Dawson, which showed Greg, Shane and others playing a game of spin the bottle. At the time of this video, Kai was just 15 years old, but he was smitten with Greg, replying to all of his tweets in hope of being noticed. Contact with Kai didn't begin until 2012, which was the 12th of February to be specific. And at this point, Kai had just turned 17 or 16, and Greg and Kai began to date on the 27th of February. Now, regardless of whether Kai was 17 or 16, it's still illegal. The first time the pair met in person was on the 8th of March 2012, which is shown by the screenshot here from Kai's account. On August the 12th of 2012, Greg moved to New Mexico to have a relationship with Kai and move in with him. Now, at the time, Kai's parents thought he was living in a college dorm room and they had no idea that Kai was even dating Greg. I'm going to skip over the rest of the timeline. I just think it's important to acknowledge that a relationship began whilst Kai was still so young. So why do I not personally fully blame Kai? His actions are atrocious, he's a terrible person, and I agree completely with those two statements. However, it must also be remembered that Kai's been in this relationship for years, and despite being cheated on, the allegations against Greg, he still pertains this relationship. So let's assume every detail of what every other girl has said is 100% true. Do you truly believe that such a manipulative and horrible person such as our dear Greg hasn't been doing the same thing to his husband? With Kai being such a young age when the pair began their relationship, it gave Greg countless times to groom Kai into exactly what he needs. And this is only further proven by the time in which Kai does break up with Greg, only to return to him. We've seen this with Billy before him, breaking up, manipulation, back together. And if you want physical evidence, you best believe I've come prepared. Let's return to point 6, gaslighting. The first conversation alone is so evident. When Kai first broke up with Greg and was considering divorce after he cheated on him with Billy, he admitted that he never even wanted a girlfriend to begin with and that it had been Greg who had pressured him into it. In his video, he made it seem like it was you who wanted one and he just encouraged it. It was his idea. I was open to it, but he kept pushing me to date Billy when I really didn't want to. Wait, so Billy just used you to get close to Greg? She wasn't actually your friend at any point in time? Correct. This wouldn't have happened if she ever cared about me. But does that also mean that Greg's encouragement of your relationship with Billy wasn't fake? Greg encouraged our relationship because he got something out of it. So you haven't done anything behind Greg's back? You haven't lied to him? I mean, the guy came to you and told you the next day. No, I've never gone behind his back. I've never loved Billy. So you felt no need or desire to get a girlfriend in the first place? When I came out, he suggested the idea. Even when I said I was open to it, I didn't want two significant others. Here's where things start to get a little foggy, because Kai seems to only ever tell these negative things about Greg when they aren't together. When he later recounts the story, he said it was his idea. Look at the screenshots just 6 months apart. Actually, I wanted women because I'm attracted to women. My sexuality isn't a pawn for you to try and insult others. I don't want to sound offensive, but why did you have a girlfriend in the first place if you were married? Because Greg consistently asked me to have one even though I didn't want one. In regards to now allowing Kai to see his family, why do I think that that was solely Greg's choice? Well, it actually comes from a now deleted video, Draw My Wife. I'm going to try my best to get videos of it from the Wayback Machine, but while doing this video, it had a really high frequency to just cut out. So there won't be any promises, but I will describe the video with my voice. So the video starts off sweet enough, a crude drawing of Kai with some compliments, which really reminds me of point 1, love bombing. Then the video continues to talk about how they met, not speaking about Kai's age for some reason or another, but it's still a fairly cute video. That is until Greg starts to talk about Kai's dad. Kai's dad saw through Greg from the beginning and desperately tried to keep his then 17-year-old son, or daughter depending on how you're looking at it, I suppose, at that point daughter, we're now referring as son, from marrying him. He made a video outlining and exaggerating his struggles with Kai's father, yet another cheap act of villainising himself. I want to give a really important summary of Kai. I think his situation is honestly what happens when the hunted becomes the hunter. Kai's been with Greg so long that the cycle of abuse is all he's known. To him, it's okay, he's dealt with it for so long that now it's just a part of life to him, which is why he so openly accepts and defends whatever Greg does. He's been conditioned into thinking that. This post from the abuse timeline sums up really well. It sums up the way in which Greg manipulated him. Kai, violation of the Mann Act, sexual predation of a minor, grooming, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse, gaslighting, weaponized his fans to harass him into submission. But he's now turned to a predator himself. I don't by any means condone how Kai is. I think that he is a terrible person too. But I also think a lot of that deep-rooted evil comes from what he's learned. It's a scarily common epidemic when talking about abusers. A lot of them have been victims themselves before, and that's absolutely Kai's problem. He's been with this person that's lied to him, mocked him, used him, and so many other things since he was still a minor. That's all he's known for so long, and it becomes normalised. I think Kai is bad. I just don't think he would be that evil if he'd stayed away from Greg in the first place, and that's by no fault his own. Victims are often too scared to leave. But I do think that so much of how he acts comes specifically from what he's learned from Greg. Is he still a bad person? 100%. Absolutely, without a doubt. He wouldn't be pursuing these actions if he didn't feel strongly about them, or strongly enough to carry on. But I do think the extensivity of that comes from how he's been manipulated over a long period of time. Still, what do you think? I'd love to hear some opinions and such. I'm sorry this video was so heavy hitting for my first upload, but I hold a lot of passion to this specific topic, and other topics similar to this. Videos from here on out will normally just be about casual drama and won't be as serious as this, or for the most part anyway. I really wanted to get my opinion of this out there. Thank you for anyone that does somehow stumble across this video. I don't know how you did, but thank you for sitting through it. Maybe you'll stick around for another video, maybe you won't, that's fine. But thank you for watching this, and goodbye.